that brings psychological contentment.
So one of the things that John and I want to share is a tip about making it visually interesting. So what we're going to do now is switch our backgrounds. So we're going to give you some very concrete tips about what you can do. So if you have a green screen behind you, which I do, you can key in another background. And interestingly enough, if you just Google Zoom backgrounds, you'll come up with a virtual background. So let's say you are hosting, start off with having a background and even have several so that you can change them throughout your Zoom. And other tips about engagement, John?
You know, religious festivities are all about connecting, coming together, sharing. And you know what? That still can be done virtually. And I think that's the first step, is to acknowledge that everything that you used to do live, you can still do somewhat differently, but achieve it virtually. And I think what's important is to find exciting, new, fun ways to make the first virtual Rosh Hashana a celebration to remember.
And one of the things that I say is you don't have to have the entire meal on Zoom. What I recommend is that you begin your session with a proper Zoom interaction where people are focused on each other. You have a go around, each family talks about something, you maybe read something significant, you sing a couple of songs, so you plan it out. And I think one of the things, John, you and I talk about in the virtual transition is be very deliberate, right? You can't just expect that you're going to switch on your computer, go onto Zoom, have the camera on. And I told you the story about how during Passover, my nephew was watching and he was sitting in a cabin somewhere in Cape Cod and he was watching our meal. And it really wasn't a good experience for him. What would have worked is if we would have said, okay, we're doing Passover, we're doing a couple of prayers together, we're singing together, you contribute, you find someone in the family to host it.
Yes.
And that's an important thing, right?
Absolutely. We're in a new space, so people need direction in a new space. And that's why you need a leader. You need a host to lead everybody through this new process. And I like what you said, Nadia, about start off virtually. No one looks glamorous eating. Everybody feels subconscious if a camera is on them when they're putting food in their mouth. So, but your highest impact points are called the law of primacy and the law of recency. First impressions, last impressions. So start off your festivities coming together, greeting each other, creating the atmosphere, creating joy. Then allow people the space to eat, to do what they want. And then again, closing. The last thing, the law of recency, is where you come together, end on a high, and that's what people will remember. So frame it, top and tail.
Yes. Oh, I love that. The law of primacy. And that's true. I mean, so many people who are joining us today are finding themselves in virtual meetings. So let's say whether you're doing a virtual Rosh Hashanah, birthday, anniversary, or any other event, these rules all apply. Is that it's not a natural thing. It's not as simple as you go from in-person to virtual and you do what you've always done. No. Another tip is if you are talking to your family, make sure that you are looking into your camera, right? And people don't do that. And that's something you and I talk about a lot in our virtual presentation skills training is right now I'm looking down at Clive Kaplan. Hello, Clive. I'm looking down at Bernice Fine, at Tracy, at Frank. I'm not looking at you. The minute I want to communicate with you, look into your camera because that makes you feel that I'm actually talking to you. So, let's elevate the experience so that it's not something that people are doing without being intentional. Now we can hear that someone has their mute off. If you're not talking, put your mute on because then that way we can't be disturbed by all the sounds going on, right?
Absolutely. And another little trick is if you are hosting and you are leading the event, is you have the power through Zoom to actually put people on mute because, a dog might come in, a kid might have a drama, whatever, which does sabotage everybody's attention and focus. So you also, as the leader or the host, have the power to put people on mute if there is a distraction.
Now let's talk about children for a moment. So one of the things you and I discussed was, if you have children, make them part of the play, make them part of the production. Tell them, okay, we're going to sing apples dipped in honey, we do eat, we dive into Hashem to make the new year sweet. So you're going to start off with that, and darling, you sing your song, and so is going to do it. So plan it out, right? Include the children.
I always say the most dangerous client or the most dangerous audience is a passive audience, because passive people, passive children get bored and distracted very, very quickly. So give your children tasks, give them responsibility, make them feel included, and it gives them a focus, a positive focus, rather than being a negative saboteur or something that causes distraction or derails the whole Rosh Hashana event.
I think that's so important. And you and I were talking about dress. Share your thoughts on what to wear for your Rosh Hashanah Zoom.
Well, do you know what we're talking about? You know, your biggest impact is your visual impact, is how do you show up? And you know, we are visual beings. The visual makes the greatest impact on us as human beings. So you want to create a special festival or festivity. You want to create a special virtual space. And that is, you know, if someone was coming to your house for Rosh Hashanah, you would dress up, you'd make the effort, you'd look good, you'd dress up your home, you'd dress up your table. All these things can still be done virtually. So we might be losing real-time engagement, but we can make up with it. Virtual backgrounds, dressing up, having one or two props that are going to help and create atmosphere. Make it special. Compensate for what they're not having.
Let's talk about the props.
All right, Nadia, props. Okay, now this is a competition. I've got to find something that's, let's find.
Before we get to the props, very good. Before we get to there, John, that's very good. Before we get to the props, if you're wondering how we're doing our virtual backgrounds, I know some of you have become Zoom aficionados, and some, John, you have outdone me. So just remember, all we have is a green screen. If you have a Mac, you don't need a green screen, but I literally have a green piece of fabric. I do this trick where I'll show you the green piece of fabric just so you can have a look at it and see what it looks like, because what I'm really sitting behind is that. Yeah. And just a green piece of fabric works incredibly well and gives you good clarity when you keep in your background. And you can ask us questions about that. Now let's get to props, John, and then Laurie will tell us if there are any questions at this point.
You know, I mean, in terms of props, is anything that creates atmosphere, that supports you or creates visual interest. So anything to do with Rosh Hashanah, bring it in, make it visible. Still create what you would do in your home normally. That's going to make it special and make it feel a little bit more normal for those people that are feeling the loss of being together in your home.
And I love the idea of having, let's say, your apples and your honey, and then doing a ritual where all together on Zoom, we all do it. And then somebody can, now what's interesting is this Friday night being Rosh Hashanah, very religious people won't video things, but then very religious people wouldn't be on Zoom. So if people are watching going, because we're Shomrei Shabbos, which means observance of the Sabbath, we wouldn't be doing this. But so that's why I wanted to extend this conversation to all your virtual interactions. So if you're having a virtual birthday, and I've watched many that have been absolutely torturous, where everybody sits there not sure what to do. And what we've started to do is, again, appoint somebody who's going to be your MC, and then just say, everybody, let's share a favorite, if it's a Rosh Hashanah memory or a memory of the individual, or just something that celebrates, so that there's a purpose and a point.
And I think sharing is the key word there. So whatever you can do to create connections, sharing, make people feel loved, special, and make the festivity seem special, that's what I would advise to do. So get creative, make it special, make it new.
I love that. And then you and I had this conversation also about, we often have mothers and, grandparents, and what a wonderful time to find out from a grandparent, what's your earliest Rosh Hashanah memory, or what's your earliest memory, or find out something about them. so that they feel included too. And you also said something earlier when we were talking to our mutual friend Pauline, that she has tech savvy kids. So even if you aren't tech savvy, there's definitely a member of the family that is.
Well, I think the older generations are going to be really feeling the loss, because that is probably the highlight of their year, to come together with family to celebrate the new year, all of those things. So they might be feeling a sense of loss and a sense of lack of connection. And I think it's important to acknowledge that up front, because once it's been acknowledged, everybody can move past it and focus on the here, the now, the virtual, and how we can still make it special and a celebration to remember, and that the kids might be the first Rosh Hashana that they ever remember later in life, because it was so different.
Yes. And some of the technical things I wanted to get to about just looking better. John, I don't know about you, but I get at least someone or several people a week saying, oh, I just hate what I look like on camera. And now I'm having to do this in a medium that is so foreign. What advice do you give them?
Well, Nadia, I know you're going to agree with me. If you want to look good on camera, the first thing, the most important thing, is to get your lighting right. There's nothing like lighting in terms of design and looking good. And I mean, Nadia, I'm sure you'll agree with me. I know you've said it many times, is you've got to have light coming at you from the front. The moment you have lighting light or the back, it creates dreadful effects. So you want natural lighting from the front, or even a desk lamp or a bedside table lamp. You want light streaming at you, and that'll take 10 years off, make you look good, and you can really enhance your appearance just by getting the lighting right.
Is that not so well said? And of course, Zoom does have an app that allows you to touch up. So if I'm looking 10 years younger than any of you who saw me recently, I have the touch up app. And to John's point, the biggest faux pas that people make is they put light or windows behind them. They look like a cardboard cutout or a silhouette. And I say, if you do that, you can look like you're in the witness protection program. The other thing, and my mother, Annette Bilchik, is watching this, and I'm so delighted. And she and I talk about this all the time, is just check your camera angle, because nobody wants to see the top of your head and no one wants to see up your nostrils. And the way that your camera is designed on your computer is so that it looks like that or like that. So it's very important that every single person who's on this call plays with this. And that means that you literally take your computer, or if you've got a separate camera, check that your eye is level with the camera, so that you are talking into your camera. And that means that you may have to put your computer, if your computer is embedded, your camera is embedded in your computer, you may need to put it on books. And John, call it cheating, but you call it something else. Tell us about that.
What are we talking about? Sort of camera
eyeline. Cheating your eyeline.
Cheating eyeline is, what? Any festivity or religious occasion or any business meeting, it's all about connecting with your stakeholders, your family, your friends. And then how we connect and create the strongest connection is through the eyes. And we need to remember that everybody that is tuning in virtually, they live in that little camera lens at the top of your screen. That's where they live. So the moment, most people are not even conscious about it, the moment you're looking at all the little thumbnails and the people down below, can you see, when I look down, I've broken the connection between you and me, because we're not making eye contact. The moment I look up into the camera lens, I'm looking directly at you. There is that emotional connection. We can build a relationship. You can feel included, and that I am present.
And John and I were on a call, and I said, one of the things I've learned to do is cheat slightly, where I can look down, but look back up. So I can look at John and then look back into the camera. And he said, Nadia, I don't call that cheating. I call it
using your peripheral vision. So I'm looking into the camera because that's where your eyes are, but peripherally, I'm still scanning, and I'm able to look down at Bernice, Frank, Moira, Tracy. So you use your peripheral vision to sort of scan, but you've got to remember their eyes are in that lens right directly, hopefully in front of your eyes.
And that is something that's so critical. And both John and I do a large amounts of training, both individually and with groups. And still, you know, we've been doing this for 6 months now, and the eye line issue still remains problematic, and people's angles of their cameras still remains problematic. And the other thing is, you know, in the world of television, we speak about having a medium shot. So you want to be in your shot. So we want to see at least your head and shoulders. We don't want to just see your head, because as it is, we're seeing much less of you than we would in person. So the idea of having a medium shot works really well. So John refers to this as the stagecraft of Zoom, right, John?
You know, you can't get away from it, is we all are performers. So we are performing virtually as we connect with each other. And your stagecraft, you want to make sure that you center of the screen. So you're in the middle, that's where you have the most presence. That the camera angle, as Nadia said, is so important. A lot of people, you just see their heads, or sometimes you don't even see their faces. I've seen more double chins than anything else. There's nothing more unflattering than being filmed from below. So you basically want to position yourself in the middle of the screen, center stage. The balance is right. You've got presence. Your impact is the greatest when you are center stage.
And, you know, the feeling, and that's why I really like it if somebody facilitates, insofar as, let's say you've got a member of the family for Rosh Hashana, and it's the same thing of a member of your team who's very reserved. If you call on that person, but give them some advance warning. So I know I was on a recent birthday call and for my uncle, and they'd asked me to facilitate. And I made very sure that I facilitate in a way that everybody had a chance to talk. But my uncle's brother was one of those very reticent people. So before the call, I said to him, just to give you a heads up, we are going to be asking about favorite childhood memories of Gary. So please, will you prepare something? So some people need preparation. You know, you and I can wing it. And my dear friend Pauline O'Kelly, who is a wonderful actress and voice coach and remarkable human who is on this call as well, she can wing it. But a lot of people, they're uncomfortable. So take that into account, right?
And not in business, we call that managing expectations, because you're putting people into process. You're getting them to prepare for whatever you are expecting from them. So it's what we call defining the rules of engagement, how it's going to work, this new situation, this whole new virtual reality, but also managing expectations of your family, of your parents, of your children, of your friends, so that when you call on them to participate or deliver, they have prepared in advance. Far less surprises and horror stories.
I like that. And I was thinking about, there's so many adorable things of, you know, songs. Somebody put out a young boy singing a beautiful Rosh Hashanah song. You know, finding, again, your techie in the family who says, let's play that. And again, I'm not talking to the very religious community who aren't using technology. And before John answers that, Laurie, are there any questions? Is there anything anybody would like to ask us as we chat away about our Zoom worlds?
So there are no questions in the chat box.
Yes.
But if anyone would like to unmute,
please
and ask a question.
Pauline, I know you'll have questions.
Laurie, who is with my mother right now, I'm sure she has a good question, Laurie. She can ask it through you because she always has a great deal of feedback. So I'm delighted for a question. But while we carry on until anyone, feel free to unmute and ask us a question. We will then carry...
Nadia, I see that your
Yes.
glasses don't have reflections on. Often when you watch Zooms, people who have glasses have terrible reflections coming off them. How do
Now,
you
these are not 100%. I mean, if I don't have glasses at all, of course it's better. Mine do have a bit of reflection. But what I've decided is that my ability, so they do a little bit, and I try and put the light away so they're not glaring. But what you want to do, and I would rather be able to see very clearly than not have reflections. I see John's taking his off. But I try and turn my light just a little bit away. So if you, in my studio right now, my one light is facing the green screen and the other light is closer, but not directly on the eyes. Because if I take my light like this and I put it on, this is my ring light, it would be very glary. So I try and minimize it. But you're right, glasses can be an issue, and I keep my glasses cleaner very close by so that they're at least clean. But that is an issue. Not having glasses is first prize. But I find I need my glasses. The other reason, and this is, I keep my glasses on because when I don't have perfect makeup, and I find it's very difficult to have perfect makeup on Zooms, the glasses give me total symmetry. Because as it is, and this is something that stops people enjoying what they look like on camera, is how many of you keep looking down at yourself on camera and see what you look like? So I'm curious, I'll tell you what I tell my clients, to go, I hate what I look like on camera. And John, what do you tell people?
You know, I think in terms of the eyes and glasses, and, you know, I think that's just my hardest earlier lesson is ring lights. Nothing reflects like ring lights into your glasses or spectacles. You look like you've got Fruit Loops in your eyes. It's the most disconcerting thing. I actually, one of my earlier Zoom training virtual presentation programs, I recorded it for one of the delegates, and I was horrified to see what my glasses were doing. So I think Nadia's given the tips, but you know, if you need glasses, you just don't want that light bulb or that ring light shining in or reflecting into your glasses. That's probably the biggest thing to be careful of.
Now, Pauline asks us a very good question, and this is pertinent to business and any other events, where we call it managing dissent. And she says, how do you handle interruptions? And it's not that people are intentionally interrupting, it's just that we can't see all of you. So we don't have all the cues to see if you want to speak. So sometimes people speak over each other. John?
Well, again, this is all about managing people. It's managing expectations. And I think, you know, with anything, whether it's a holiday festival, a virtual platform, or whether it's a virtual business meeting, is manage expectations and set ground rules up front. Because again, if you manage expectations, tell people what they can do, can't do, set boundaries, people know how to behave and what to expect. Get buy-in right at the beginning. And then, you know, if someone goes a little bit sort of errant and starts crossing boundaries, gently remind them of that. I also find it's your extroverted personality types that battle to sit back, listen, let other people speak and have the floor. But again, I think we need to be clever about this. You know, if someone is very extroverted and likes to talk, give them the floor space up front, let them express, get it out of their system, and then they hopefully calm down. But pushing them back on trying to control them often becomes a tug of war, which you don't want to get into. But manage expectations up front, let the extroverts speak. Again, if one or two extroverts speak up front, it encourages the others and gives the others permission to engage, speak, and share. So they can work very much to your favor. But also, once they've had their say, remind them that everybody else deserves and needs a turn to speak.
And John, you said it so well, is you have to do it in a gracious way. So one of the things both John and I do is talk to teams about meetings and virtual meetings. So there are three key things. You want to invite participation. And John said that so well, which is that you don't want a passive audience. You want to maintain momentum. That means you want to get covered what you want to get covered. You don't want to take up too much of people's times. You want to stick to the agenda, but you also want to be able to manage dissent. So we've discussed the inviting participation part, right? Where you make sure that everybody's prepared. They know what's going to be asked of them, and they know their role. And in a meeting, what we might do is we might cold call on people, which is I might say, Clive Kaplan, can you unmute and tell me? That's a cold call. But a warm call is if I say, you know, Moira and I were discussing, Moira, won't you share that with the group? That's a warm call. Then we have the maintaining momentum. Well, the maintaining momentum in a meeting is we want to say, you know, John, that's a really important point. Honor the person. Perhaps that's something you and I can discuss offline, right? We call it putting it in the parking lot. The other thing was to say we want to validate people's parking. You never want to say, John, that's got nothing to do with what we're talking about, because that is all he'll remember, right? And it's not high school. So John, appreciate your point. Maybe that's something you and I can discuss offline. And there's so many gracious ways of saying, for the sake of time, Tracy, I hope you don't mind, we're going to move on, but I have taken note of that. And then there's the managing dissent. And to Pauline's point, dissent can come in the point of somebody who interrupts you. And you can use both voice and body language to say, Charlene, thank you for that. Can I just finish this thought, or just a moment? And again, so much is in tone of voice, because if I say, Charlene, I'm not finished, how am I going to make her feel? But if I go, can I just finish this thought? And I really want to hear what you have to say. In that way. The other thing I've done in big groups is, let's say I haven't heard from Bernice and I hadn't heard from Arnold. I might say, and John's speaking, I might say, John, I appreciate that. A bit concerned I haven't heard from the others. So let's hear from some others. So there are ways of doing it, but tone, I think, is very important. I've got this joke, Pauline, that I tell people in person, that when people are interrupting, I walk up to them and then I put my hand on their shoulder. And if they carry on, I dig my nails in, and it works every time. But of course, that does not work in the virtual world. And that, by the way, is a joke. Thank you. So the other question that Charlene had in the chat I saw was, I have a question. I'm listening to this, being Shomrei Shabbat to improve our general family meeting. Okay, so she says, being Shomrei Shabbos, yes, thank you, Charlene. And I think that's important. If you are Shomrei, obviously, but if you're, I know so many families now who have a weekly chat, right, John? People are getting together on Zoom, and who's leading it? Who's making sure that the person who never speaks? So what John and I wanted to share with you today is just some very skilled facilitation techniques, skilled things that we do in our everyday work. So at noon my time today, I'm going to be talking to 40 Porsche, we call it Porsche in America, not Porsche, HR professionals. And I'm going to be talking to them about managing their Zoom meetings and managing their WebEx or their Adobe Connect meetings. And we're going to be talking about these things and how you improve and enhance the quality of your virtual meetings. So your point, Charlene, is so important. The grandkids range from 1 to 17. Sometimes it's circus and they play around with the visuals and become clowns. John, I'm going to let you handle that.
You know what? I mean, children, like everybody, need stimulation. Children don't have the filters and probably as much conditioning as us adults have. So as I said, if they are sitting there bored, you are inviting trouble. So again, I mean, I like what Nadia was saying earlier about managing momentum. We've all been invited to so many countless virtual birthday parties. I know I almost refuse to go to those anymore because people don't manage momentum. I was at one a couple of months ago where the introductions took well over half an hour, and I sat there passively listening to strangers introducing themselves who I knew I'd never meet in my whole life again for well over half an hour. Very few people are going to have the appetite or patience for that. So if you are hosting, manage time, manage expectations, manage the momentum, because again, you don't want adults or children to get bored. When children get bored, you are inviting big trouble. They're not being naughty, they're giving you feedback. Think about it that way.
I like that. And then Bernice says, can only the host have a virtual background?
Anybody can. Bernice, what you do is at the bottom where there's the mute button, then you've got the stop video button. There's a little arrow to the right of stop video. You press that, and then you press choose virtual background.
And suddenly you have a virtual background.
And you can upload your own.
Yes. I have to show you all this virtual background of mine. And then, John, we want to share some others of yours. This is my studio. So if I'm interviewing someone, I recently interviewed Felicia Mabuza Subtle talking about Mandela. And there I had my virtual background. And John, I know you have some good ones too. This is what we've done. We've gone from the boardroom to a virtual scenario. So if I'm teaching and training, I do that. But I do have to show you that I have a living room virtual background that a friend of mine who knows me and knows my house very well said to me, you have done such a lovely renovation.
Wonderful.
That was my virtual background. Pauline says, I would do a laugh activity with kids and get them to dance. I think that's an excellent idea. But the key to all of this is having somebody who is in a very gracious, relaxed way, in the same way that John and I would facilitate a session, or Pauline do it, and use these for family events. Because if we're going to be doing this on a family event, you definitely need somebody who is very graciously just managing and making sure that everybody feels included and that there's maximum participation, because it is precious time.
You know, as I said, these are wonderful skills that you can practice out with your family, you can practice with your friends, and you know what, it's good practice for business where there's far more at stake down the line. So I would say use your intimate discussions, your family, your friend discussions, all these sort of informal virtual engagements to prepare you for your business engagements, and that's where you really need to shine and succeed.
I love that. And I'm now going to talk to John about something that is called icebreakers. And icebreakers are an excellent way of a generic kind of question that you can ask that means everyone gets involved. So for example, with my noon call today, which is about 8 o'clock your time if you're in South Africa, I'm going to start my session. And up until about a week ago, my icebreaker was, how have your summer plans changed as a result of COVID-19? And I got so many interesting responses. One woman told me that she was going to get married and didn't. And then you find out if you've got teenagers and children. It was just a good icebreaker warm-up. Today, I was thinking about, in fact, if you've got any good ideas for me, John, I often ask people how they get their first name. I ask people, when you can return to work, is that something they want to do? And surprisingly, a lot of people do want to return to work.
You know, I think we need to take a step back, Nadia, and actually ask ourselves, what is the purpose of icebreakers? Why do people use icebreakers? And that is to create psychological safety so that people feel a lot safer and freer to communicate, to engage, to share, and to express themselves. That is the purpose of an icebreaker. I think the next thing to consider is that, as wonderful as icebreakers are, it depends on the personality types that are in front of you. Some people are going to hate icebreakers, think they're stupid, silly, uncomfortable, awkward. Other people are going to love the weird, wacky type creative things. So know your customers, know who you're speaking to, and choose your icebreakers according to the personality types in front of you.
So any ideas from the people who are watching, any events you've been to where people have asked a particularly good question, a question that gets, and John just puts it so well, your audience from passive into active mode. The other thing you can do if you're conducting a meeting is ask people to type into the chat something just to check that the tools of engagement work, so that people are constantly feeling like they are involved in the process.
And you know, I mean, I've talked a lot about the power of first impressions here, and I'm sure, Nadia, you've seen and everybody else has seen the first 5-10 minutes of any webinar, any virtual platform meeting. It's all about technical issues and trying to sort those out. That is the first impression, and it's generally not a good first impression. But there's also a wonderful opportunity, and I think, Nadia, you were phenomenal at the outset of today, maximizing that opportunity. Is with all the technical issues and people tuning in and everything sort of coming on board, there's a wonderful opportunity to connect with people, build engagement, create rapport, and I think you did that exceptionally well today.
Thank you for saying that, John, because often in my meetings, you know, some people will come on 5 minutes early. I'm one of those people. And some of those people will come on 5 minutes late. And you don't want to start a grand introduction to whatever your event is or meeting until everyone's there. So often, and this relates to in-person meetings as well, so far you go, okay, let's wait another 5 minutes until everyone gets here. I don't do that. I don't punish the prompt. So that is, use that time. And I use that time just to chat to whoever is on the call. And of course, if it's Portia this afternoon, it's going to be, you know, where are you? It's going to be, how has work changed? Are you still enjoying working from home? What have the challenges been? a very good one that Keith Varazi, who wrote Never Eat Alone, he speaks about your sweet and your sour. If I was right to go around everybody today and say, in this age of COVID-19, what's been one, it's been maybe asked a lot, but what's one good thing that's happened? Well, one good thing that's happened is I met John French. Had COVID-19 not happened, I would never have been talking at Secretary's Day in Johannesburg, and I would never have met John, and I wouldn't be talking in front of you. That's a sweet. Well, a sour is that darling Annetta, my mom, who lives in Johannesburg, I haven't been able to visit her. That gives you something very real to talk to somebody about. And again, some people will be more spontaneous and readily answer it, and some people take a moment, right, John?
Absolutely. But, the most important thing in life, whether it's in our personal lives or professional lives, is to build relationships. Because once we have relationships, we have support. In business, the stronger the relationship, the more you can leverage that relationship and sell. And everything we're talking about now, and setup and using time and opportunities wisely, is to build relationships that you can leverage and depend on, especially in very tough economic times. Sometimes it's the relationship, and only the relationship, that prevents people firing you. Think about that one.
I like that. And Pauline says she uses that pre-time to get to know their names. Another aspect, and please tell us if there are any questions, thoughts you have, things you want to ask, is I talk about, we've all now sat through numerous online events. And if everybody can type into the chat, this would be a good indication of what is for you the one thing that irritates you the most. If you can type into the chat, that's Arnold, Bernice, Pauline, Tracy, Clive, Bev, Moira, Helene, Steve, Charlene, June. The one thing that irritates you the most about these virtual interactions. If you can type in, we're going to give you a moment to do that. And if you can tell us the thing that for you is your pet peeve.
And what Nadia has done here is she's encouraged engagement. So she's taking people who are sitting here passively and getting them actively involved, and that's going to feed her conversation. So, well, again, well done, Nadia.
Okay, so let's hear what they are. I use, late start, says Charlene. Now I'm going to ask you, is a late start a verbal, a non-verbal, or both? So is a late start something somebody says or something somebody does, or both? So I put that in the category of a both. Is too long-winded an answer a verbal, a non-verbal, or both? John, would you say it's a verbal, a non-verbal, or a both?
The late start's definitely non-verbal. Too long-winded, that's verbal. Verbal is all about words, spoken words or written words. So too long-winded, too many words.
People talking over each other, is that verbal, non-verbal, or both?
Verbal, very much. Word speaking, verbal, I would say. Do you agree?
I would agree. So not everybody participated in this exercise, and maybe because you had something else going on, but just think about your pet peeves during these virtual interactions. And how much of that is what you say, how much is how you say it, and both. For me, in these virtual interactions, people who really should understand about lighting in front of them and good eye level and all of those things, I feel at this point, everyone should understand it. I understand we don't need to have perfection, but particularly in a business context, it's important that we understand and have our cameras on. One of my pet peeves is people who, in a meeting, when they know they should show up, don't have their camera on. I understand when you are in a situation where you're just listening, observing, and in a situation like today, but if you are meant to show up and you don't. So there's a verbal and a non-verbal aspect. And John, for you, let's talk about, if we are going to create that amazing first impression, and John points out in research, and I'll read you the research that John sent me. John sent me this. He said, researchers from Princeton University have found that people make judgment about such things as trustworthiness, competence, and likability within a fraction of a second. So in that fraction of a second, John, would you say that it's more verbal, what you're saying? Is it more non-verbal, or is it both?
Nadia, it can be both, but before you speak, before you use words, you're seen. It's that visual snapshot. About 84% of what we learn is through the eyes. And, just taking one look at someone before they speak, from their body language to their facial animation, to their energy, to their attitude, we've made that judgment in 1/10 of a second. That's how long it takes to create safety or likability, credibility, and trust. And, especially in a COVID world where everything you touch might make you sick, anybody you meet could make you ill or even kill you. We are far more risk adverse. Our senses are highly in tune to actually assessing situations, people, for degrees of safety. So I think we need to be very, very conscious. What are our projections? What are we doing? And I said that first impression is everything. You don't get a second chance.
And that's something, to take into account for all of the people on this call who are using these platforms, both personally and professionally. And one of the things I'll be talking about to Portia this afternoon is that there's what you say, but equally important is the nonverbal. And John and I spoke about lighting and background and facial expression and looking present. And all of those things are the nonverbals, and don't underestimate them. You don't need to be speaking to communicate. So if you're on a call and you're sitting looking completely bored, or you're munching on a sandwich and some things, we can see it. There was an ad that said, "Action speaks so loud, I can't hear a word you're saying." But just that reminder that we are seen in our entirety, right?
I think there are 3 words to think about, and especially if you're a business person, meeting anybody new, going into a virtual engagement with them, is everybody we meet in our lives. They need to get to know us, like us, and trust us to build a relationship or to do business with us. And that is so important. If you're not making any effort, if you're not present, if you're not showing respect, they're writing that down on your CV. And you are inviting a reaction, cause and effect. We invite the responses we get from other people. It's all a choice, but be clever. Think about it, be strategic. Make sure that you are inviting the responses you want from everybody in your life.
Oh, I think that's so superb. And John, just tell, you do a lot of coaching, you do a speaking, and tell us how and we can help you. You were so kind and gracious to come on to this today and share your wisdom, expertise with us. Tell us about your work, your professional work, and if we want to reach you, or if anybody's listening to this saying he'd be great for either my company or myself, how do we go about that?
Thank you, Nadia. My business is called Communication Guru. The website is www.communicationguru.co.za. Been in the communication game probably nearly as long as you, Nadia, and as Paulina Kelly, who's also watching this webinar. I remember at a previous company, where one of the first companies I started in the industry, Pauline was very instrumental in teaching me the ropes about voice training, about presentation skills. And I mean, that was like well over 20 years ago. So the 3 of us have got a lot of experience. At this stage, over 20 years later, I do a lot of leadership training, grooming your leaders in terms of having impact, presence. And I teach people very much about how to make an impact, how to sell, how to really present themselves effectively to bring in business, how to close sales, how to build stakeholder and client relationships. So it's very much about growing people to grow their businesses. And that's what we do. But we do all types of training, everything from writing skills to your frontline training, pitching, presenting, influencing training, negotiation skills training. So if you or your colleagues or your businesses need that support and it's going to take your business to the next level, contact us, communicationguru.co.za. You can also sign up to the blog and get free tips.
You can sign up, what you said, we lost you in the end. You can sign up and get a free?
You can sign up for the blog, and occasionally, more often when things are running smoothly and I've got the time, is I send out communication tips and techniques on sales, presenting, communication, and people can sign up to receive that blog as well.
Thank you. And really, John, I can't thank you enough, because this all started, I had done a session on virtual presence for Orjet. And when Tracy reached out, I thought, what can we bring that's fresh and new and different? And John, you have been fresh and new and different. And I think the essence of what we're talking about, and John just said it so beautifully, is getting people to know us and to like us and to trust us, whatever that format is, and just to be conscious. So before Laurie ends, I just want to thank John again and thank all of you. What we've really looked at today is taking ourselves off autopilot and being deliberate. And hopefully we've given you some mindset and some skill set to do that. So the next step is for you all to incorporate this into your next, whatever your virtual event is. And I promise you that if you do, you will surprise people, you will engage them, and you'll have a whole lot more fun. And now it's over to the wonderful Laurie.
Thank you both so much. But before I thank you, I'm just going to launch a poll for Orjet. So as you all know, we are a nonprofit that supports and empowers businesses in the community through endless mentorship and training, just like we had today with Nadia and John, giving them such vital skills needed in business. And as we know, this virtual world is needed now in business now more than ever. So we appeal to the community to donate generously to Orjet so that we can continue to do the work that we do. Now, just to the big thank you. Thank you both so much for your time today on behalf of the Orjet team. And thank you for sharing such invaluable knowledge and giving us such incredible tips with the participants, and for taking the time to explain the importance of showing up in this new virtual world so eloquently and showing us how to do so. You both work so well together and have such a vibrant presence. So we are just so grateful for your time today.
Thank you.
And Hashana Tova to everybody.
What did you say, John?
Hashana Tova to everybody. I think that's important as well.
Yes.
Thank you. And to those who celebrate, I'm wishing you all a sweet new year.
Absolutely. Shana Tova. I hope it is a sweet year. And there's so many jokes about ending this particular year. So certainly a year where we need our apples dipped in honey more than ever. What a great way to start it. Thank you, Helene. Thank you all.